Welcome into episode 2 of the Herald Sports Headlines podcast. As always, I am joined by my partners here at the New Jersey Herald, Andrew Tredinnick and Will Harrigan. Gentlemen, how's it going today?
That time of the year again, Matt. State playoffs are heating up here. We got 8 of our 13 area teams, almost 2/3, have qualified. You have one all-local matchup in Sussex Tech and Lenape Valley tomorrow night in Stanhope. We have a big one in Parsippany where High Point will look to spring an upset. And Newton, despite playing a mostly sophomore and junior lineup, has a home game against Glen Rock in the county seat.
And I'm just looking forward to, Sussex County, 2 straight years with sectional champs here. And, with the new system here, we're destined for some rare matchups that we're not necessarily accustomed to seeing with the committee kind of shifting away from the northern numbers. And now it's just, natural seeding based on, who played the best. And so we'll see what happens down the line with some of our best teams as they move on past the quarterfinals this weekend.
Absolutely, Andrew. You look at Wallkill Valley being in the same section as Boundbrook, a team in central Somerset County. And you have Sparta could see West Essex, a powerhouse in Essex County, could be coming up this way next weekend, assuming the Spartans take care of business. Newton could be going to Verona, who's been dominant in Group 1 but is now up to Group 2. So a lot of fascinating matchups here that have been created, like you said, by this new snaking system the NJSIAA has introduced.
Yeah, it just makes a lot more sense that they're doing it this way. Last year, you saw a lot of uneven sections that, teams...
Lopsided results,
Lopsided results, especially once you got to those bowl games. A lot of them were disappointments, which you could really see in those bowl games, the quality of the sections were different. So I think one of the right moves that they made was to do this. People could question whether the way they're seeding them and the OSI is, worth it. But I think snaking the sections is definitely the right move there. One thing we wanted to touch on before we get to the game previous this week is one team that didn't make it, which was, if you said at the beginning of the year that Kittatinny would have been out of the tournament altogether, I don't think many would have believed it. Obviously, injuries really hurt them. Tyler Sweat missed most of the year after dominating against Vernon in the opening game. Obviously, Jacob Mafaro missed, I guess you could say, a half against High Point, a game against Newton. Before they played Morris Catholic. He did play in that game, but three turnovers really killed him in that game. Well, they did pile up some yards against Morris Catholic that game. Essentially eliminated them. What do you think?
And Matt,
the year for Kittatinny?
You look at football, and it's a 9-week season. It's 36 quarters in the regular season, and yet it all comes down to a couple inches, a couple yards. Kittatinny against Parsippany, they scored late to seemingly tie the game. They went for 2. And the Wind tried to run the ball in, got stopped in the 1-yard line. And, with Parsippany having a freaky 8-1 season by their standards, those inches, that yard, quite literally cost Kittatinny a state tournament appearance. That just shows you how thin the margin can be.
Yeah, and I'll go back to the game against Wallkill where you look Wallkill's sitting there on the 16 line, essentially, going into last week. By virtue of that win where they come back with about a minute left, everything changes. Kittatinny's not in the tournament now, and Wallkill is, despite kind of what happened down the stretch where both teams kind of got hit by injuries. That win was massive for Wallkill. That loss, another one of those close losses for Kittatinny kind of, it sort of hampered their hopes of, making the postseason.
Elsewhere in our area, as far as teams that did not qualify, Vernon got a nice 26-0 shutout win over Lakeland yesterday in a consolation game. Obviously Vernon defensively struggled quite a bit this year, but they pitched a shutout on their, last night of the season to move forward. So a nice result, for the Vikings. Kittatinny, who we've been talking about, went to Hanover Park and dropped 49 on them in a 49-41 victory there in a consolation. So our area, even our teams that didn't qualify, going out strong here against out-of-area opposition.
Yeah, I think watching that Kittatinny-Wallkill game, you couldn't have imagined that one team would be a 7 seed and one team would be out, but that's what happens when you have injuries that Wallkill had.
Especially Group 1,
To an extent, Kittatinny's Mafaro, they were ahead at halftime against High Point 7-6 when he was playing. Then he goes out. They had their game plan centered around him and the Wildcats, so that really screwed them in that game. And obviously Sweat was a big, playmaker for the Woodmen if he played all year. But that, like you mentioned, it's part of football, unfortunately.
And Matt, like you said, injuries are a big part of this. And on the Group 1 level, for a team like Wallkill Valley to lose at one point 6 starters down and yet to still qualify for the playoffs, in Group 1 where depth is at a premium, it just goes to show the type of coaching job that Bobby Leach does on a year-in, year-out basis over there and how lucky Wallkill is to have him. I mean, they'll have a tough time up at Park Ridge, but what a terrific, terrific job that he has done just getting them into the playoffs.
Yeah, I guess transitioning into that game we'll start with. I think Wallkill's gotten a lot more healthier now than they were towards the middle of the year. They're pretty much just missing Mastriani.
Yeah.
So that they have a complete team except for their quarterback, which their defense now, Nugent's back with Weekly, Thunder Nolan's back. Ben Mazeski's been outstanding this year and pretty much holding the offense together by himself. So now they go to the Park Ridge and they'll try and pull off an upset.
Yeah, and this is a team that obviously even a guy like Tony Chisulo, he's had 4 games under his belt. Obviously, Leach is more than willing to open up the playbook, and he's still going to pass. They'll keep you off balance.
I wouldn't count them out. No,
absolutely. And Testino did play last week. He had a few pass attempts, and they're high on him. He had a high ankle sprain, but he's back. He played a few snaps last week, so that's a guy they're high on. Their second-string quarterback could be back for this game. But you look at a guy like Ben Mazeski, and this guy just essentially carried this team through to get some results, just to keep them alive. They were, 1 touchdown down entering the fourth quarter against Lenape Valley. They just kind of ran out of gas in that one, but that guy, Mazeski, I mean, he can run against physical fronts. It doesn't really matter. And, Park Ridge, a team that gave up 300 yards in the NJIC championship game last week on the ground. So I'll be curious to see how that sort of matchup works out this week.
And, Andrew, on the flip side, on the War of 94, which, of course, went 47-0 to Sussex Tech. Wallkill was injured in that one. The Mustangs, all right, are going to be playing in their second ever state tournament, game tomorrow night. And they're going to Lenape Valley in an all-area matchup. I know there's excitement for this on both sides. Both clubs 8-1, both clubs divisional co-champions. There's going to be 2 fan buses going from Tech down to Stanhope tomorrow night. The excitement is high. You'll be there. What are your thoughts going into that one?
It's kind of interesting. I know they both love to run the ball. Both have the wing T offenses. Like Will was mentioning to me yesterday, they go to Don Smolin's wing T camp. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they kind of attack it from that perspective. But obviously Sussex Tech with Brendan Hall, Bo Maroney, Austin Durham, a little bit more flashy, a little bit more speed. So it'll be interesting to see, obviously Lenape is, tough in the trenches, how that speed, how they can kind of attack them. They have a kind of a smaller front, how that matchup goes. And on the other side, Lenape, Nick Molinari being that big physical runner against that kind of speed defense for the Mustangs, along with Togno and Kaplan, I guess, is expected to play here. So it'll be interesting to see the power versus the speed, how that kind of works out, and obviously an experienced team under Don Smolin, a team that's going to be prepared regardless of the opponent, against, Brian Stellingworth's first time.
Oh, yeah.
He was an assistant, under Leach the last time they were in. But
what a coaching job he's done.
Yeah, this time it'll be, his opportunity, a team that's only lost once, has kind of risen to each challenge that's been thrown their way, aside from Morris Catholic. But it'll be curious. I mean, I'm excited. I'll be at the game, and we'll see what happens.
And Andrew, one other thing here is that Sussex Tech has really gone a long way of changing the narrative of their program this year. No more are they, like in their own little bottom class in the county. Those days are over now. But I tell you what, if you go, it's one thing to beat Hopakong, one thing to beat North Warren, 2 area teams, which they did and did handily. You go into Stanhope and beat an 8-1 Lenape Valley team, and that's gone forever. You've changed the course of your own program. If you go in and beat an 8-1 Don Smolin coach team in their house, there's a lot on the line tomorrow besides advancing in the state tournament. What an opportunity for the Texters.
Yeah, obviously, along those same lines, you look at last year, Lenape, kind of that sophomore-driven, only had 3 wins. Now they're back in the state tournament. Obviously, they're perennially in it. Last year, the Mustangs with 7 wins didn't cut it. Those guys are hungry just to prove that they belong, there in the quarterfinals. So it'd be interesting, an all Sussex County affair, and looking forward to seeing how those 2 teams match up.
Yeah, I definitely think Tech, if they could have picked anybody to play, I think it'd be Lenape Valley.
Absolutely.
Because, this is, I remember when I covered them during the middle of the year after the Wallkill game, and they were playing Hopakon next week. They were excited to play, Hopakon, just because they're a Sussex County team, and they were trying to prove, to the teams in the county that they can compete, and there's no, Lenape Valley and Sparta are the public teams that have historically dominated this county going back forever. So for this chance, as well mentioned, for Sussex Tech is huge, and also, as Angie mentioned, for Lenape Valley, they're also playing with a lot of motivation just because of last year and how that went. But this group of sophomores last year, even though they didn't have much success in the wins and losses, you knew they were talented. I think by playing them last year, Don Smolin might have taken one step backwards last year, take 2 steps forward this year. I know, Will, you talked to both coaches for our preview. Anything interesting coming out of that? And we're going to ask you for a prediction for the game.
Yeah, I tell you what, Brian Stellingworth, could not have been more complimentary to Don Smolin and how much he has helped build the Tech program through their wing T camps. You guys understand, like when I was a student at Roxbury High, I was a manager there. We used to go to the wing T camp also. I mean, what people don't realize is with all the college coaches there, all other high school coaches from across the country, you expand your playbook at that camp. You really do. There are a lot of trick plays, a lot of variations of like power, of jet sweep type plays that you learn there. So I can certainly see where Brian was coming from. But, one thing Brian did emphasize to me was that his group was not just happy to be there. That was 2015. This is 2019 now. This is their second time around in the tournament. First time for the senior class. A lot of them 4-year starters. They're not happy to be in the state tournament. They are, make no mistake, looking to go to Lenape tomorrow night and come out with a win and go to 9-1. And that is their goal.
Yeah, and I saw, I'm not going to make a pick because I'll be there, but I saw that double handoff both at Sussex Tech, against Bergen Tech, as I did against Lenape Valley, against Wallkill Valley. It's kind of interesting just to see how, Stellingworth has applied what he learned at that camp. And he's got the weapons there that, make it a little bit, easier, I'm sure. He's got that power back in Brendan Hall, and then, 2 speedier guys where he has the options of how he wants to attack Lenape Valley.
I'm going to go with the Patriots tomorrow night, actually, and I'm only going to pick that only because they have been running that wing tee to perfection for over 40 years now. Not to say that Tech doesn't, but you just look at the way they both play. It's so similar. I think Lenape just does it a little bit better than Tech, and I think they win a close one. But could Tech win this game? Absolutely. But I'm going to go with Lenape by about a touchdown and 10 points.
And Matt, pick for you?
Yeah, I'll go with about 10 to 14 points for Lenape. I just think the difference in this game is Robbie Erlin, Rocco, Ryan Hall up front. I mean, the kids are just animals up there, and I think they're just a little bit bigger, which will make an impact. If Tech wants to win, I think they're going to have to get a few big plays out of Durham, which he's delivered all year for them. Gavin Coles has been Lenape's big guy, big play guy. He's out. Molinari's more the obviously down and down between the tackles guy, but they're kind of missing that home run threat. Drew Todd has filled in for him nicely since then, but Durham could be a difference if we're looking for a guy to make big plays in a game that a few big plays might win, just because both teams don't really pass the ball that much. Okay, moving on, we'll
stay in North 2 Group 2.
Staying in North 2 Group 2, and fellas, we got a good one in the county seat tomorrow night, and Matt, you're going to be on hand for Glen Rock at Newton in the 5-4 game. A trip to Verona looms, but the Braves been on a roll. Look at that trick play last week to beat Madison on a hook and ladder. How about that?
looking forward to asking Coach Barzero how often he practices that play. As it looked like they were practicing it for a while. It was to perfection to beat Madison. I mean, especially in the situation, just 50 seconds left, they're down at 4th and 25. I mean, it's their only chance to win the game. Really, at that point, is to pull off something like that, and they do it. Newton's run the table since they were 0-2 start. I think at this point for Newton, anything they do in the state tournament is gravy.
Absolutely.
Because they weren't expected to be here. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year.
The transition year.
Year, I guess you'd call it. But Jack Young has just been incredible in leading them through their schedule. I mean, going to the shift to the more of the spread with him and getting the ball out to Bailey and Pappas. You know, Peyton Nolan is back now, which is huge. He's coming off a 100-yard game, which Newton didn't really have. A running back who could break open the game, you know, in the beginning part of the year, and now they do have that with Nolan. I think, you know, they jumped up to get the 4-seeded last week. They weren't projected to get a home game, which is big that they get a home game, and you know, betting against Coach Barzero in the state tournament is a risky proposition. So I think Newton will, you know, should be able to get by. Glen Rock coming out of the NJIC, which has been down a little bit this year.
Although I look at a 13-0 win over Pompton Lakes, which does make me think this is no automatic for Newton tomorrow night.
4 or 5 games, certainly.
But I do like the Braves though over a 6-3 Glen Rock team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in the playoffs, you got to trust Barzero with what he's done just to get to 2 straight sectional finals. And obviously he's catered their offense to what works and what he feels like he can kind of, you know, mold his team to get the most out of them, and he's proven that, you know, going 7 straight wins here since, you know, the 2 opening losses. So they're playing well at the right time. Obviously, you know, they come in with some confidence after being able to pull off a game last week where they looked kind of dead in the water. So I think the Newton Braves, you know, and then obviously on the other side, you know, if they advance, they'll play the winner of Verona or Kinnelon, and we'd expect a Verona team that's kind of perennially a contender. So
that'll be an uphill climb for the Braves, but fellas, Doc Geltz Field up in Verona is a tremendous place to watch a game. I've been playing football there for decades on decades, so that'll be at least a fun experience should the Braves get by.
Yeah, the Hillbillies of Verona, always a popular nickname.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I think Newton, like I said, anything they do is gravy this year, because the next 2 years, I think they're primed to possibly win another state title.
Or 2.
That way. Or 2.
Oh, yeah.
The class they coming up, mostly juniors and the freshmen, last couple of years, look great there.
Matt, it might not be fair to say this to Parsippany, who's 8-1. They've beaten traditional powers, but you know what? Oh, and I will be there, and I'm not going to pick the game, but I like High Point's chances tomorrow night going down to Parsippany in North 1 Group 2 when you take a closer look at it. The Cats have had a good year, 5-3. Travis Talamy as their fullback, kind of empowering that team. Jake Licentia, quarterback. They've looked good, and I mean their only losses were to Group 4 Passaic Valley. You know, were to Newton, who obviously has been on a roll, and to Lenape Valley. So, what do you think? It's a very interesting matchup tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of how many years ago was it where High Point won as an 8 seed?
That was 3 or 4 years ago. Pompton Lakes.
I got the wrong Cardinals.
Yep. Yeah, it really seems to me like that's a team that is primed to pull off an upset, because the thing is, with that triple option, you can criticize all you want. You can say it's so 1995, whatever. But if you fall behind and High Point has the ball, that's not a position you want to be in. That's just the reality of it. You know, I'm looking forward to that one, you know, in Parsippany. Their first home state game in 21 years, by the way, which will be quite a scene there, I'm sure. But, you know, Matt, you've seen the Cats more than any of us. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you mentioned the weather before.
Oh, yeah.
The weather is going to be cold. That's going to favor High Point. Parsippany is a team that wants to throw the ball a little bit. High Point, you know, was only going to throw it to throw teams off balance. But when they did throw it, Alex Bushwell to Connor Lake has been a connection that they've been able to. They connected against Kittatinny for a nice touchdown off a play action rollout, and they connected last week against Lenape Valley right before the half to make it a 14-7 game, 30-yard touchdowns.
Which is interesting because Connor Lake was playing quarterback when Alex Buchwald went down with injury. So a little bit of an interesting hookup there. So
right, he stepped in well. You have the line is it's a young team. Troy Van Orton has stepped up. He's their best player on the line right now. Comisar has been a very good linebacker for them. So it's not the line of last year, but it's still a very physical group. I mean, I don't know how often, if you don't play a team like that, Parsippany,
teams not used to being there. Yeah.
Teams are around here used to playing a team like High Point. So it'll be interesting when you're seeing that kind of physicality. Maybe you haven't seen it a lot. It could be
and when you look at Parsippany closer, not to say they aren't legit, they're 8-1 and they won their conference, so they are legit. But you look at them, a little bit closely. They beat Wallkill when Wallkill had just lost Alex Mastriani. All right, they beat Kittatinny on the aforementioned, goal line stand on a 2-point conversion attempt. They beat Mountain Lakes in double overtime. They've been kind of living on the edge here. They lost to an average Kinnelon team in week 0. Again, not to disrespect the Redhawks, but things I believe even themselves out,
right.
as the season goes on. So that's just another thing to keep our eyes on, in my opinion. And
I'll just play devil's advocate. Obviously, Parsippany playing well at the right time. Obviously, some 2-score games here down the stretch. Knocked off Pequannock. Boone, who's having a little bit of an improved season. Obviously, Whippany Park is,
it's down, but
but it's a 22-point win.
Right.
A team that had 0 wins 2 years ago, moved on, won 4 games last season. Now doubled that again. There's a reason that this team is where they are.
Oh, they are,
and they're going to be hungry to prove that this is no fluke in the first round on their home field in a charged environment. High Point is a junior kind of laden team. Obviously, they have Travis Talamy. I'm going the Red Hawks by a score. It's going to be close.
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 Parsippany didn't come all this way to lose in the first round, so we'll see what happens.
I can't make a pick here, but Matt, what say you?
Yeah, it's tough. Thing I have struggled with, usually when these games are close, I'd rather favor the team that is a little more multi-dimensional. Game script is going to have a big impact. If High Point gets up early, that's going to be huge. And if they get behind, I don't like them playing from behind them as much. I'll go with Treads on this one. I'll lean slightly into Parsippany, but it's definitely an upset.
It's definitely not it's not a sure thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Not. I would say one that is a pretty sure bet, and the reason why we won't be covering a home game in our area in favor of High Point is Sparta Nutley tomorrow night. Fellas, Sparta's rolling. Nutley is an average Essex County team at best. We've seen the script before of Nutley coming up into, northwestern New Jersey. They kind of West Morris several times, gotten destroyed. This might get ugly real quick, and I think Sparta is setting themselves up as the top seed in Section 2, Group 3 for a run here. But the Spartans have only had, 2 games all season that were decided by single digits against West Morris and Randolph on the road. Not easy places to play. Shut out Morris Hills last week for Tora. By this point in the season, those are no longer a freshman. The Spartans are rolling. I don't think this is a game for very long. What say you guys?
I just say that Sparta is ecstatic right now that they
at their draw.
They avoid both Ramapo and Rahway by virtue of just the way that things worked out with this new seating format. So the bugaboo, I guess, if you will, has been Ramapo the last 2 seasons for Sparta. Losing in the season opening game. Being eliminated by them. I guess it's in the last 2 seasons or the last season now. Mm-hmm. It just looks, the draw for them. I don't think they're concerned about opening, the state tournament against Nutley. It's more what's down the line. It'll be interesting just to see how far this offense can kind of lead them. Maybe, obviously, it looks like our best chance at, maybe a sectional champion here, just the way the draw shook out for them.
Yeah, we'll get to the bracket previews later, but just finishing up on Nutley, I don't have much to add except that I could tell you that even though they won 28-0 last week, Sparta wasn't too thrilled with how they played against Morris Hill, so Frank will be on them, and they will be coming out hungry in the first round here.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Matt, on that same section, actually, we're talking about Sparta possibly seeing Riverdale. Well, Riverdale has the Jefferson Falcons coming to town. It's been a weird year over in Jefferson because they obviously lost to Sparta big. Tread, you were there. Mm-hmm. They lost to Montville in a game. Matt, you were there. They actually had a double-digit lead at one point. Ended up losing 38-18. But they did qualify for the playoffs. They are now going to go to Riverdale, who's been a traditional power up there. They're certainly going to be underdogs, but the way that offense goes, I know it's going to be cold, but I never say never, So what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, like you mentioned, that they win, it'll have to be probably in a shootout.
Yes.
I mean, that's always one thing that would be in their favor. They've gotten a little bit more balance in recent weeks with Michael Gold. That running back has been on a tear the last few weeks. They beat West Milford and Mendham.
Mm-hmm.
They probably would have liked to put up a little bit more of a margin than they did in those games.
On West Milford, yes, or Mendham as well, certainly.
So, but coming off those 3 losses, at least they secured those wins to make a state tournament appearance, which coming off of last year is definitely, no matter what happens in this game, is a successful year for them. And they have the athletes outside with Hannah and Ripley to at least make teams pay attention.
Yeah, that was going to be my thought. Was if they can take care of the ball, obviously Bam Johnson has proven when he's careful, picks his spots. They're a team that can kind of hang around with anybody. Beat Mount Olive earlier this season. Yeah. Obviously 3 games here where they're coming in with some confidence. When he turns the ball over, in the case of a game against Sparta that I was at, things went south in a heartbeat. So it'll be curious, if they can establish the run with Michael Gould. That's kind of when they're at their best, when they can get both sort of facets of their offense going. And they need to make sure they can kind of make a stop when it matters most. Their defense hasn't, at times has, kind of kept them in it, but for the most part, that's kind of been their downfall, has been their defense kind of getting off the field and, keeping things close or, from snowballing before, to see if they can kind of hang with Riverdale here.
And fellas, the last matchup we have is going to be down the shore on Saturday, and that, of course, is Pope John, who has played arguably the toughest schedule in the state, 5 of the top 8 teams in New Jersey. And yeah, they went 1-8, but they've been competitive in some of them. They're going down to Matterdai, who has lost 2 short publics. I'm going to give a shout out here to Charlie Culver, who of course runs the Sparta Summer Basketball League and is a mainstay at local sporting events. He actually saw Matterdai beat Manalapan last weekend. He's seen Pope John several times. Charlie loves, and I mean loves, Pope John to go down there and win on Saturday. And you know what? Last year, the Lions went down to St. John Vianney's lower seed and thumped them. And I'm not saying that it's going to be a rout, but I love Pope John as well to, put that good schedule to use here, upset Matterdai, and advance to the non-public Group 3 semifinals. They might be feeling a little bit disrespected by the seeding committee, giving them a 6 seed despite their schedule, and only 6 teams entered, of course, so they're the lowest in the field. You know what? With a kid like Delaportis and the hype he's getting, I see no reason why they can't go down there and beat a Matterdai team that, as I said, has 2 losses to public schools. Granted, good ones in Wall and Rumson Fairhaven.
Yeah, it's a little bit, obviously being so far removed from the South.
It's a drive.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But, obviously they play a largely public schedule. So, obviously with what Pope John has gone through, the gauntlet that they've faced.
Bergen Catholic.
Yeah, they're set up for this time of year to see what they can do. But, obviously Mater D kind of proved that they can beat some good teams last season on the way to winning the section. So
sure.
We'll see what happens. I'm leaning a little bit towards Mater D just because of, obviously what they've proven so far this season.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I gotta trust in Charlie. He's proven he knows what he's talking about. I think you mentioned the seeding, which I'd agree with, because Pope John's better than Donovan Catholic. They're better
Absolutely.
than St. John Vianney. It's, I don't know,
if you want to argue,
and they got the toughest draw.
So they got disrespected in that regard.
And especially considering, Matt, obviously, okay, are they better than Donovan and Vianney? I would say, based on resume, it seems so. Are they better than Matt or Dye? Well, we'll find out on Saturday. And you know what? If they win, it'll be a rematch with DePaul of a game way back in August, which must feel like 3-4 months for you as opposed to 2, Matt. But you were there at that one. Pope John was in it for a while. So, hey, you never know.
Yeah, they were in it first half. They got a couple big plays that kept them in the game. They couldn't cover the tight end who was committed to West Virginia from DePaul. He was a matchup killer in that game. But DePaul hasn't looked great this year since that game.
Plus Del Barton in a shock loss.
That might have been the best they looked, but they did come back the week after that, and they had a big win
over Bergen Catholic.
So
yeah,
that's been a crazy year up in the non-public.
A little bit of an enigma.
It has.
Bergen Catholic has the 6th seed in that section. So
and meanwhile, Seton Hall Prep is hosting St. Augustine in a 4-5 game. Let's just say a lot of people in non-public circles
not happy with that.
Are not happy with that. Rich Hansen, who's the St. Peter's head coach, is on the seeding committee, and his team, to get to MetLife, the road will be Del Barton and then the winner of Seton Hall, St. Augustine. No offense to any of those teams. Seton Hall Prep to beat St. Joe's, but that is a favorable draw. We'll just leave it at that.
Certainly comparable to Bergen Catholic being behind St. Augustine, to Pope John being behind,
Donovan Catholic. Yeah.
It's a little bit of a mystery what the committee was looking at there, but we'll move on and try and look big picture here with an overall preview of each section, who we think if we're going to get any sectional champs this year. So we'll start
in Group 1.
Group 1 with Wallkill's our only team, and I think that's Section 2, North 1, Section 2.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be the year for Wallkill. I think going into the season, we thought it could be the injuries just caught up with them. Park Ridge is going to be tough, and even if not, the Hasbrook Heights machine, only 2 losing seasons since World War II, is also in this section. So
Weequahic is always...
Weequahic is in there. Ugh.
Yeah, that'll be the...
Hoboken, a traditional powerhouse, so that's a tough bracket right there.
Yeah, even if Wallkill gets past Park Ridge...
they're going to Newark.
Yeah, and it just doesn't look to favor, Wallkill's... they've done a tremendous job this season just to get there, here, considering all that they've been through, but... the draw is very difficult for them. So,
yep. All right, moving on to North
2, Group 2.
North 2, yes, North Section 2, Group 2. We have Newton, the 4th seed. Obviously, Lenape Valley 3rd, Sussex Tech 6th. So lots of locals in here. What are your thoughts, Will?
Well, I'll tell you, that Lenape Tech game. We talk about why it's a big game. Here's another reason why it's a big game. I think Warwick's a paper tiger, fellas, and you know what? They might lose to Pequannock tomorrow night, but even if they don't, that is a very, very favorable matchup for the winner of the Tech Lenape game. There is a path to a sectional final for the winner of that game. And as far as the other side of the section, I think Newton, should get by Glen Rock tomorrow night, but going to Verona, that is not going to be an easy challenge for Coach Parzero should they advance. So I think at the end of the day, we don't get a sectional champion in Section 2, Group 2, but I think we will get a team in the final.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see which of the 2 teams between Lenape Valley and Sussex Tech move on. The 2-7 game is Waldwick versus Pequannock. Pequannock, a team that's kind of been, they beat Newton earlier in the season, but they've kind of fallen flat against some of the other, teams up north. Looking at losses against Kinnelon, Boonton, 3 straight losses coming in.
Yeah.
They'll go in down south to Waldwick, and Waldwick's only losses to Lyndhurst this season.
But a little bit of a questionable schedule, but still 7-1. You can only play who's in front of you. Obviously, Rutherford's been a little on the downslope this year, but it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think looking at just Lenape Valley. What Smolin produces year after year, just the type of preparation that team will have. Obviously, he's been gaining steam as the season's worn on. A dependable running back in Molinari. Multiple weapons with Togno, Kaplan. Obviously, they have the ingredients to potentially make a sectional final and then, maybe travel to Verona. I wouldn't be shocked. And then, anyone's ball game in a sectional final, with only one loss for Lenape Valley. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'd agree that Verona is a pretty nice favorite right now in this section. They've just been dominant, throughout the year. I think the question with Lenape Valley, I agree with Will that they'd be favored over Waldwick.
Yeah.
And Sussex Tech could even, be favored over them too, or at least be right there. I think the question for Lenape Valley to win the section, you got to win 3 games in a row. At some point in these 3 games against 3 good teams, they're going to have to make a big play in the passing game.
Yeah.
They're going to be in third and long. They're going to be down at some point. They're going to have to make a big play in the passing game, and we'll see if they can do it. If they could do it, they'll have a chance to win the whole thing. But I do think they'll at least get to the final against Verona.
And I'll tell you, Matt, I think High Point has a shot in Section 1, Group 2. Obviously, switching sections here. Yes, 7 seed, going to be on the road. They're going to be going to Parsippany tomorrow night. But if they get by that game, Mountain Lakes hasn't been, consistent this year. The Lakers haven't. And, there is a path to the final for High Point. I'm not saying they'll get there, but Mountain Lakes did have a loss to Parsippany, who obviously High Point would have to beat to get there. And they have a loss to an up-and-down Pequannock squad. So, I'll tell you, I like the chances of High Point better than most 7 seeds. I'll put it that way.
I absolutely agree. I mean, they also, barely got by Madison, which is by the same score that Newton did, or by the same margin. So, I mean, for a 7 seed, it would be incredible just based on the fact that they barely had any returning starters coming this year. But for High Point, you cannot love the draw that they got anymore.
Couldn't have asked for a better one.
Yeah, and you just look at this section. It'll be interesting up top. Just Lyndhurst, they're the 1 seed in North 1 Group 2 against Pascack Hills. And then, Westwood, a team that, perennially is, up top in this section. Kind of seeing what they're capable of, how they stack up against a Lyndhurst team that's been undefeated this season, won the NJIC tournament. And down low, if High Point can get past Parsippany, they'll, if they, play Mountain Lakes, it'll be interesting. Mountain Lakes, a team that's kind of lost to some teams in this area in the past, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and of course, switching over into Section 2, Group 3, and of course, this is the section of the Sparta Spartans. And, starting off with Jefferson at the bottom of the bracket, I mean, they're going to Riverdale tomorrow night. I don't think the Falcons will advance. I think that's a very difficult draw for them. Riverdale is, a very successful program in this decade. But on the other hand, their rivals, up in Sparta, I see a path to MetLife here. Will it be easy? No. They'll have a nice, cushy game against Nutley tomorrow night for sure. But, the Montville West Essex winner, especially if it's West Essex, will not be a walk in the park for the Spartans. And then, of course, Riverdale in the sectional final is as good as any sectional final to be played that Friday night. So I think Sparta will get to MetLife. I think they'll be the only sectional champion from the area. But they will have earned it despite not seeing Ramapo or Rawway in their section. They'll still have to earn it.
Obviously, Sparta as the 1 seed against number 8 Nutley. The 4-5 matchup is West Essex and Montville, a team that Sparta just totally dispatched
the second half there.
Earlier this season. If Montville were to get past West Essex, you never know what happens if a team, obviously they'll be hungry, for kind of revenge there. Parsippany Hills is the 3. Against Paramus. Paramus, they played earlier this season with Par Hills winning that game 28-10. Parsippany Hills played a 1-score game against Riverdale, so they're a team that comes in, winning 6 straight. So we'll see if Par Hills can maybe get past Riverdale. You never know what happens. Riverdale kind of having a down season. Be curious to see what happens if Par Hills were to get into the semifinals. But Sparta, like I mentioned earlier, just the draw seems to line up. All the stars align maybe this season for maybe that other Ramapo, that Ramapo matchup in a bowl game. Wouldn't that be something? I'd be ecstatic to see a matchup like that, under those circumstances, or even if it were Rawway on the other side.
Oh yeah,
a team that's normally in the other section. of all the teams, it looks like Sparta, everything's kind of lined up for them. Obviously, they have to go out and win the games, but obviously, West Essex, we'll see. We'll see.
As far as Pope John goes, just to wrap it up here, fellas, do I think they have a winnable game against Matterdai? Absolutely. But you look at non-public 3, and that section is just a meat grinder. They'll have to get by mighty DePaul, if they win that game against Matterdai. But even against DePaul, should they defeat them, they're looking at either Vianney or Red Bank Catholic especially. So it's tough. It's tough without a doubt. And I like Pope John this weekend, but it's hard to see them breaking that 17-year state championship drought this year. It's just too tough in non-public 3.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Obviously, it seemed like the time for Pope John might have been 2 years ago when they had that massive senior class, a team that's kind of building maybe towards that in the next 1 or 2 years as they kind of groom Delaportis as a sophomore and some of those younger guys. I don't think this is the year where they make a run, but obviously when those sophomores, those juniors, they have those big games under their belt moving forward.
That'll pay off.
It's going to be obviously that much more important for them as they try to build another contender here in the next few years.
All right. Great, guys. Great stuff. That will wrap it up for episode 2 of our podcast. We will be back throughout the playoffs to keep you guys updated.
Yeah, ready for that Tundra tomorrow.
Oh, bundle up, fans. Bundle up.